Early on the morning of June 6, 1944, a heavy mist hung over the coast of Normandy. The waves of the English Channel lapped quietly against the rocky cliffs, as if unaware that one of the largest battles of the Second World War was about to erupt here. On the horizon, hundreds of landing craft slowly made their way across the gray waters. On their decks, soldiers checked their weapons and equipment, whispered prayers, or smoked nervously to steady their shaking hands. The salty tang of the sea mingled with the acrid smoke of diesel engines. Overhead, bombers rumbled across the sky, ready to drop explosives on German fortifications and sow chaos before the first wave reached the beaches. The Allied command had spent months planning this operation, codenamed Operation Overlord. The plan was bold, almost reckless, to land troops on 5 beaches: Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juneau, and Sword, under heavy enemy fire. It would be the largest seaborne invasion in history, involving more than 156,000 soldiers, over 5,000 ships and landing craft, and roughly 11,000 aircraft. Every beach had its own strategic challenge. Omaha was heavily defended by experienced German troops, while Utah was less fortified, allowing American forces to establish a foothold more quickly. Omaha Beach proved the most brutal. Soldiers of the 1st and 29th American Divisions faced concrete bunkers, minefields, and barbed wire. When the first landing craft touched the sand, hell broke loose. Bullets whistled overhead, artillery shells exploded all around, and men fell into the sand and surf. In just the first 2 hours, more than 2,000 soldiers were killed and countless others wounded. One story stands out. James Reeves, a 19-year-old from Ohio, was shot in the leg early in the landing. Despite the pain, he dragged wounded comrades to cover, moving inch by inch toward the enemy fortifications. His small group managed to break through and open a path for the rest of the waves, proving that courage and determination could outweigh sheer firepower. Each second on that beach felt like an eternity. Small groups of soldiers took cover behind rocks, broken barriers and trenches. Survival depended on speed, courage, and a measure of luck. Before dawn, Allied paratroopers dropped behind enemy lines to seize key bridges, disrupt communications, and create chaos in the German rear. But dense fog and fierce anti-aircraft fire turned the landings into a nightmare. Many paratroopers drifted far from their intended zones, tangled in trees or cut down by enemy fire. Yet those who regrouped accomplished their missions, securing bridges, destroying communications, and paving the way for the troops on the beaches. One remarkable story was Clifford Owen, a Canadian paratrooper whose team landed in a forest patrolled by German soldiers. With only 3 men, he managed to sabotage a bridge and signal the advancing American troops, proving that even in the most chaotic circumstances, individual acts could shape the battle. The Allied fleet played a decisive role. Cruisers and battleships bombarded German fortifications, trying to suppress the enemy's guns. But the defenses were formidable. Concrete bunkers, minefields, and artillery pieces up to 150 millimeters in caliber. Ships moved cautiously, often under direct fire. The USS Texas, for example, fired more than 1,200 shells at Omaha Beach alone. Yet German soldiers continued firing from their reinforced bunkers. Landing craft battled the waves as well, their soldiers slipping in the surf, some washed overboard, their equipment sinking into the water. Every minute counted. Any delay on the beach meant becoming easy targets for the enemy. By midday, Allied forces had begun to secure the beaches. Soldiers moved forward over fallen comrades, through destroyed barriers, across sand soaked with blood. Losses were staggering. On Omaha and Utah, American forces suffered over 6,000 casualties, while British and Canadian troops lost around 4,000 at Gold, Juno, and Sword. Yet the objectives were met. A beachhead was established, and the path into France was open. The D-Day landings proved that courage and resolve could overcome even the most fortified defenses. Countless individual acts of heroism punctuated the day. Thomas Smart, a British engineer, risked his life to clear mines for advancing tanks on Juno Beach. Jean-Pierre Lemoyne, a French civilian, guided Allied troops through minefields and sheltered paratroopers. Soldiers who had lost everything still found the strength to help the wounded, raise flags, and press the attack. Every small success contributed to the overall victory, turning individual bravery into collective triumph. Today, the beaches of Normandy are quiet. Waves gently wash over sand once torn apart by explosions and gunfire. Memorials and cemeteries honor the thousands of soldiers who gave their lives for freedom. Each year, people visit to remember the courage and sacrifices made here. And when you look out over the calm waters of the English Channel, it is almost impossible to imagine that on one June dawn, the fate of Europe was decided on these shores. In many ways, the Allied landings in Normandy became the hinge on which the entire Second World War turned. For years, Hitler's forces had dominated continental Europe, constructing a fortress of steel and concrete along the Atlantic coast. The Western Allies understood a brutal truth. Without a successful landing in France, there would be no swift path to Berlin, and no realistic chance to defeat Nazi Germany before it solidified its grip on the continent. The Soviet Union had been carrying the heaviest burden on the Eastern Front, suffering unimaginable losses. If the West failed to open a new front, the war could drag on for years, potentially reshaping the political map of Europe in ways difficult to predict. Military planners were painfully aware that history is full of invasions that failed spectacularly. The English Channel, narrow though it seems on a map, has swallowed armies for centuries. A storm arriving just a few hours earlier could have overturned the landing craft, scattered the fleets, and rendered air support useless. The invasion depended on a narrow window of calm weather and a specific tidal pattern. If either shifted, the assault would have been impossible. And even if the weather cooperated, German defenses along the coast were formidable. The Atlantic Wall bristled with artillery, machine gun nests, minefields, and obstacles designed to rip open landing craft before they reached the beaches. A single miscalculation, a delay, a navigational error, a failure of communication could have turned D-Day into a catastrophe. But the stakes were even greater than military failure. If the invasion had collapsed, Hitler could have redirected divisions westward, strengthening his hand against the Soviets and prolonging the war indefinitely. Occupied nations would have suffered even longer under Nazi rule. Millions more civilians might have died in camps, bombings, and reprisals. And with the United States and Britain forced back across the Channel, the Allies' political unity could have fractured. A failed D-Day might have changed not only who won the war, but the shape of the post-war world, its borders, its alliances, even its moral foundations. Instead, the landings succeeded, not perfectly, not without staggering cost, but decisively enough to change the direction of the war. Once the Allies secured a foothold in Normandy, the opening widened, drawing in tanks, supplies, and reinforcements that poured across the beaches day after day. Within weeks, the German front began to collapse under the pressure of a true two-front war. The liberation of France catalyzed the momentum that would carry Allied armies to the Rhine and ultimately to the heart of Germany. For millions of people in Europe, D-Day marked the beginning of the end of occupation and the slow return of freedom.